My name is Jared Alps and I'm with Can Equip, and we're going to talk about 1200 series planters, maintenance, hooking it up, and getting it ready for planting. We're going to start here at the front of the planter and the tractor, the back of it. So as you guys know, when we hook the tractor up to the planter, it becomes a pretty much hooked up for the rest of the season. So just remember on your tractor before you hook it up, look it over. If you see some problems, get them fixed. Sign it up for a service advantage if you want, but make sure the tractor's pretty well ready to go so you don't have some unforeseen issues. You know, first 2 days of planting season, whatever, you just can't afford downtime. So make sure the tractor's ready. So then we get to the planter, we hook it up. So there's a lot of things we can do here. If we have a PTO pump, the thing to remember, we won't be able to pull the drawbar out because we got to have the drawbar in for the PTO restraint. If we don't have a PTO pump, I would drag the drawbar out of the tractor. Reason I'm doing that is when we go up over terraces, pick it up to fold up after we get done planting, I don't have to worry about the harness, the hydraulic hoses, anything getting caught under the drawbar, and I raise it up, jerk them in two, wire and harness got jerking too, wreck a hydraulic hose, anything like that. The next thing I would recommend doing, if it was me, I would take the quick hitch off and just pin the planter directly to the tractor. Reason for that, this is out of the road. It's just a lot cleaner back here. You ain't got to worry about the hook coming back here smashing nothing. It just cleans this all up so when you can plant, you don't have no worries about something happening back here. You don't have to take this off, it's just my opinion. Next thing to remember on your tractor, know what hydraulics you have. So if you have twin flow, mega flow, or standard. Standard and mega are going to be the same, or high flow. They're going to be identical, it's just one has more flow than the other. Twin flow is where it gets a little confusing. It's the most flow, but the problem with twin flow is, a lot of you guys don't realize that, you have two pumps. One pump runs the left side, the other pump runs the right side. So if you just plug everything in, 1, 2, 3, 4, when you raise the planter up at the end of the field, your vacuum's gonna fall down, your bulk fill's gonna jump around. So ideally what you need to do if you have twin flow hydraulics is put your raise and lower on number 1 and put as many orbital motors on the right side. That way when you raise the planter up, set the planter down, your vacuum and bulk fill stay constant. If you don't know what your tractor has, call us, we can search the serial number and we'll be able to tell you if you have twin flow, mega flow, high flow, or standard. Standard flow, if like you bought a new planter this year and you have standard flow, you're not sure if you got enough hydraulics to run the planter, give us a call. We'll look and tell you what the flow is and if you need a PTO pump. Because you don't want to find that out a week before you go plant or the day you do go plant, and then it's just more downtime. So if you need a PTO pump on this planter, the thing to remember with that is the power. You're going to get a PTO pump and you're going to have an oil cooler up here with an electric fan. That electric fan takes its power from the center pin on the light plug. So if the fuse blows, this comes out, you lose power. The fan quits turning. It is never going to tell you. And you're going to keep on planting until the hydraulics just grenade and sends metal everywhere. So I've told a lot of guys what I'd do is I'd mount a LED light up here in that power wire to that sensor or the fan. If you go to the sensor, you'll be able to see the light on all the time. The nice thing is that with that, you got peace of mind. You turn around, look out the back window, you see the light lit up, you go, still good. So it's just my opinion. I would do that so I know it's okay, so I don't have to worry about it. The next thing is the power that runs the compressor could come from that center light pin, or we have a harness for that like this planter here does that plugs into the tractor. The next thing of that is, this is a perfect example. This filter is still in this electric pump. We have a kit at Can Equip where you take this filter out, thread a fitting into it, put a hose in it, run the hose down here, put a splice in, Run the hose up, put it in the back window, in the cab, put the filter in the cab. If you put the filter in the cab, the compressor will last a long time. If you leave the filter back here, that compressor probably going to burn it up in 1-2 seasons. If the filter's in the cab, it's sucking clean air in the cab, you don't have to worry about it. Call our parts guys, we'll get you the kit. It's pretty reasonable. It's a little deal we kind of put together through Tompkins with just some airline hose and some fittings. Okay, now we're going to talk about the bulk fill. At the end of planting season, what I want you guys to do is open up the bottom of the hoppers. And then when you get them opened up, clean out what's there. Then I want you to open up your lids. When you open these lids up, these latches should be a little loose. And that's for when the bulk fill turns on. You guys know how that tank swells up. If you got these so tight, they really latch down tight when there's no air in here, it'll crack the tank out. So they should be a little loose when it's not turned on. When you open this up, now granted you have the bottom opened up now, take a blowgun and I want you to reach in here and just blow all this out, let it come out the bottom, get it clean. And that's at the end of planting season. The reason I'm saying that is the less crop we have in here, product, the less likely we are to have mice, rodents live in this thing through the winter time. That doesn't mean when you go to start planting, you go, well, I cleaned it out last summer, I don't have to clean it out now. So what I want you to do now is do the same process again before you start planting, because what I've had happen is somehow a bird or a mouse got in here and built a nest, and you fill this up with seed, turn on your bulk fill, now you got a row that don't get seed delivered to it, and we got a piece of whatever stuck in the tube down here. And you know, we could have took 5 minutes and cleaned it out, and now we just developed a big frustration and probably 3 or 4 hours of trying to figure it out. So just take some time, clean all that out. When you get that cleaned out, wipe the bin level sensors off. They get dirty, they will quit working, but if you try to keep them wiped off, it does help them. So then what I want to talk about is another thing that we kind of get all confused about is the headland mode for the bulk fill. So if you have a good enough hydraulic system, I recommend, and it defaults to this every time you shut off and start the tractor. It defaults to automatically on. What that means is every time you raise the planter up, the bulk fill is going to shut off, and that's to give you extra oil to run a function on the planter. If you got enough hydraulics, just turn that off, make it gray. So gray on the monitor is off, black is on. Turn it gray, and I always tell a lot of guys, start at the left, go to the right, just bang, bang, bang. The reason for that is, several reasons. We'll be planting and we'll have a row come up as failed. So we need to decipher, is it a vacuum problem, electrical problem, seed sensor problem, bulk fill, we got to break it down. Well, if we get out, the vacuum's running, it's loud, tractor's running, we could spend 5 minutes and then realize, oh, I raised the planter up, the bulk fill shut off, that's why I'm not getting no seed out to it. And we all hit our head on the ladder every time we walk by it. So I would recommend, if you got a good enough hydraulic system, shut that off. That way it's going to run all the time. The other reason I say that is, every time you turn this on, you see that tank swell up. Well, if you're in headland mode, every time at the end of the field you raise and lower this thing, that tank's sitting there going like this. And if I take a piece of wire long enough and I just keep doing this, eventually it's going to break. And that's what I think causes some of these to crack out. So if you have good enough hydraulics, just shut it off. Now, if you don't have good enough hydraulics, what it'll do is that it will give you about an extra 8 gallons when you raise the planter up. So now we've got it all cleaned out. We understand the headland mode. The next thing I want you to look at while you have this open, look around the seal. Make sure there's no cracks. If it looks good, you've got this all cleaned out, you're ready to go. This planter takes the 50-50 blend of graphite talc. Take some of that, put down in the bottom of both of them with no seed in it. When you get the meters all in and all that, what I want you to do is you're going to shut your lid. Get in the tractor, start it up, turn the bulk fill on. When you turn the bulk fill on, that's going to blow that 50-50 mixture you put in there out all the tubes to the meters, and now you're charged up, lubricated, ready to go. Crawl back up here while it's running. Take your hand, just feel around here. You might feel a little bit of air coming out, maybe like a hair dryer, not quite that much. But if you feel a pretty good leak, that's going to cause you trouble. A pretty good leak right here, it will show up on a farther out row. So it's like anything, the path of least resistance. So if we leak air here, the thing that's farthest away is going to struggle. So feel around there, no leak, you're good to go. The next real quick question is, everybody always wonders, where do I set my bulk fill RPM? Well, here's what I say, guys. Start at the book, what it says there. Let's say it says 3,000. Put it at 3,000. If you're planting and you're having trouble with the outside rows, you know, you get in there and you're planting and you find out, well, I can go 3 miles an hour and it's fine. But if I speed up to 6 miles an hour, I'll see row 1 and 16 start slowly falling down in the bar graph. And then I get out and I look, can't find nothing wrong. Well, it filled that hopper up by the time you got back there. What I'd say then is raise your bulk fill from 3,000, go 200 at a time till it satisfies it. Okay, now we're going to talk about downforce on 2100 series and 1200 series. So we're going to kind of mix and match some things. So on the 2100 series, you can get air, pneumatic, or hydraulic delta downforce. On the 1200 series, your spring or pneumatic. If you want to convert it to delta downforce hydraulic, we can do that. And if you talk to one of our precision guys, they can quote a price for you for that. The one thing I want to talk about is, guys, on downforce, a lot of us, we just kind of pick a number. We don't really know for sure how to set it. You know, if we get our seed to the depth we need it to be, we're just kind of okay with that. So what I'm going to tell you, this is just my rule of thumb. What I would do, get the seed to the depth that it needs to be at. When you get it to the depth you need to be at, then plant, and as you're planting, just step in the clutch, let it coast to a stop. Come back here to the planter. When you get to the planter, what I want you to do is, it's still in the ground like you're planting. Grab the gauge wheel and see if you can spin it. If it turns pretty easy, you're not using enough downforce. If I come back here and I grab the gauge wheel and I can't turn it, you've got too much. It's probably not going to hurt a lot of things. It could pack the sidewall more than you need to. My thing is, we're going to wear out the bushings on the parallel links and cause other problems because we're just shoving down so hard on this row unit. If I come back here and I grab this gauge wheel and I can spin it, but it takes some pressure, then I know I've got my downforce set to about the right amount of pressure. That's where I would use for a starting point. Okay, now we're going to talk about the row unit and the drive, and I'll start up here. So on a 1200, 1250, you're going to have a bicycle chain that runs the row unit. 1255 are going to have a cable. The thing about the 1200 with the bicycle chain, if you've got air clutches, they're going to be on this shaft in this same location. On the top of that clutch, there's a Phillips head screw. Take that screw out, spray dry silicone spray in it for 1 second, and that's going to help keep that thing clean and from slipping. If you've had trouble the season before and it came up and said row unit number 16 is planting a low population, and it's like down that far and the rest are up here, and if you slow down it kind of comes back up a little bit, there's a pretty good chance that air clutch is really dirty and it's slipping on that shaft. if they're slipping and you fought it a lot, what I'd recommend, being it's winter time, is you got two choices. We can come out and do it. It's a little bit of a job. We got to take the seed shafts out to get to the clutches. Or you can take them out yourself and bring the clutches into us, or you can just do it all yourself. You need to pay attention when you're tearing them apart though. But what's going on, there's a bunch of dirt that's gotten into that. And the only way you're going to get it out is to tear it all apart, clean it all back up on that slip clutch, put it all back together, and you'll be good to go again for another 5 or 6 seasons. But if you've been fighting that, I would recommend doing that. So then we'll move on from here down to the row unit itself. Gauge wheel clearance to the opener disc. What I want to do there, guys, make sure you get that gauge wheel as close as you can to the opening disc. And what you want to do if it's got some wear on the planter is grab the gauge wheel arm and pull out on it. And if it opens up quite a bit when you pull out on it, you may not be able to shim it close enough then. Chances are this pin's wore pretty good and the cast iron arm is wore pretty good. So if you need to change the pin out, you drive a bolt in here, pop it this way. I've had to weld a nut on using impact and then change the gauge wheel. When you shim it back up tight to the disc, put the washers on in the right position to get the wheel as close as you can to the opening disc. Now we'll talk about the opening disc. Brand new, 14 inches. Wore outs, 13.5. So measure them. If they look okay, they're 13 3/4 and the edges aren't rippled, then go ahead, you probably run another season. The thing you want to remember though, if they're wore down 1/4 of an inch or you put new discs on, you need to zero the row unit. And basically check every row on your planter. I would zero them. That way this depth gauge will read accordingly. You know, because if you just turn them all to number 8 for 2 inches and none of them have been zeroed in 10 years, you could have some rows 1.5 inches, some rows 2 inches, all over the board. And normally we just turn them to 2 inches, check a couple rows and call that good. If you zero the row units out, you know it's going to be there all that way. So after the opening disc, we'll talk about the seed shoe and the furman point. I don't worry too much about checking the furman point. When my side of my seed shoe, one side will always wear more than the other, gets wore up a ways and sharp, that's when I'll change the kit. It'll come with the furman point and a seed shoe. After that, grab your closing disc assembly, shake it. If it's got a lot of movement in it, that bearing needs changed. Closing disc, measure them, 8 inches new, 7 inches wore out. Insecticide tube right here, check it. If you have the old style with the collar up here and the cotter keys or the roll pin, and you can grab this and shake it up and down a lot, the hole's slotted out. So at that point, I would convert it to this new style right here. Do not use an impact to tighten these top 2 deals down or you'll break them. You can run one up close with the impact, but just snug them with a ratchet or you'll crack them. After that, move back a little more. Chevron wheel, look at it for cracks, spin it, check your bearing. The other thing I like to do is just eyeball down the chevron rollers, and if you see one of these hanging lower, there's a good chance the weld is broke here and it's let the stop pivot, or you backed into something and pushed it down a little bit. So take a look. They all look level, you're good. If one's hanging down, take a look at this area right here. Next thing I want to talk about is the drive chain on the sections. So on a 12-row planter, we have 6 rows on the left and six on the left, 6 on the right. So this motor here is running 7 through 12. So if you're planting, 2 things could happen. If you're planting and it shows up that whole section's running low, you caught it, and that chain's too loose and it's slipping probably. grab that chain before you start planting and just move it in and out. It should have about a 1/2 inch of deflection. The worst thing that I've seen happen is the bar graph will look fine and you'll plant corn. 2 weeks later it rains, so you go back out and look at your fields, and you look at a field that you planted 2 weeks ago and you go, what's going on here? You got 3 corn plants real close and then a big space. 3 corn plants real close, big space. If you measure 17.6 or whatever it is, 1/100th of an acre, all them plants are there, but the spacing's horrible. That's because it was jumping on that seed drive motor and the chain was too loose. Okay, now we're going to talk some stuff about the row unit, seed meter all together here on the table. So first things first, on the planter for the opening disc. It's been a lot of confusion on them, a lot of change. What Can-Equip is going to offer now in stock is the standard blade, which is 3.5 millimeters thick, and then the 4.5 millimeter blade. There still will be a 5 millimeter blade available. We will not have it on hand. They've made a new change to it. I have not seen one. We have them on order, but the new opening disc will have, like I said, the 3.5 and the 4.5 in stock. They've put a ductile cast iron bearing flange and rivets, and then they've went to a Gothic style bearing, which is going to take a side load. Should last longer, and we've got them on order, but we still have some of these in hand right now. When we run out of these, they're gone. We're going to be to the new style disc now. And like I said, on the 1200 series planters, we'll have the 3.5 and the 4.5 in stock. Moving from the opening disc to the closing disc, talked about it back there, new 8 inches, wore out 7 inches. Seed shoe Furman Point kit. We don't have one right now, but there's our seed Furman Point. Seed shoe's gonna slide up, get them as a kit. When the seed shoe wears out, change them out as a kit. Insecticide tube I was talking about. There's the new kit if you got the old cotter pin style. That's the piece I'm telling you, don't tighten the bolts down with the impact. It's a lock nut, and it happens every time. You'll tighten one side down tight and then tighten the other side down tight, and when you do that, it'll crack this side. So I just advise you, you can run them down close and finish it up with a wrench or a ratchet. On the seed meter, when you pop the cover off, you've got these little notches here. What them are there is letting you know when this is wore out. If you cannot see these anymore, this cover's wore out. Look at your wear marks. If you can't see them, that's where you go from there. On the cover, if you have a 12 or 16 row 30-inch planter, you got one vacuum sensor. If you have a split row or 24 row, you got 2 of these. Thread it out of the meter cover and tap it out. Get rid of the dirt that's in here. When you get the dirt all out of that, thread it back in. Look at the green plug on there. Make sure it's not shoved all the way down. The other thing is, if this plug's gone or cracked, don't put a vacuum plug off a carburetor or something, because there's slots in here and that lets the air exhaust out and pull air in. If you put a regular plug on there, this ain't gonna read accurately. Never, never blow with a blowgun in here. If you do, you'll damage this, and it's pretty pricey little switch. Just tap it out. Come to the meter, seed disc. Lots of options here. If you guys have had a 48 cell and a 24 cell corn disc, same thing, look at these lines. If you can't see them where it runs through there, they're wore out. If you guys had a 48 cell and a 24 cell, because you had dry land and you planted at 20,000 population and irrigated at 34,000, so you had to put the 48 in. A 36 cell would do them. So if your 48s wore out and your 24s wore out, don't buy double the sets of disc. Get a 36 cell. It'll do it all. And if you guys got questions on that, talk to us. We can advise you on it. Same thing with soybeans. On soybeans, we've all had that problem when we're running our vacuum. It's surging, just up and down, up and down. If you got a 130 cell soybean disc, the holes in that disc are staggered. And we keep getting big beans every year. So when you lay the big beans on there, you'll look and see that you might only get beans on 2 of the holes, the other one's open. Well, that's going to make the vacuum drop down, so the vacuum's going to speed up. Well, the next time around, it might have 3 beans on there. So now the vacuum goes, oh, I need to slow down. So they make a 100 cell disc, and the holes are going to look like this, all one row. And they can lay on there and they'll work fine. That'll stop your vacuum surging problems, a 100 cell disc for soybeans. Again, there's lots of options on these, so if you have questions about it, talk to us. On the meter here itself, this is our agitator. If you guys are running and you got one row acting funny, you come back here, pull it apart, see one of these are broke off and it's floating around in here, just find it, throw it out. You can put this back in, it'll run. Get you another one, but it's not the end of the world. All its job is to stir this up. Singulator, this is what knocks your doubles and all that stuff off, singulates the seed going in the seed trench. There's a line right here. If you can't see this line, this is wore out. Look at it good, because you might see it on one side but not the other. Also, spin them. If they don't turn, try to free it up, because if it don't turn, it's going to wear things really bad. Also, grab these, look at the plastic rivets, make sure none of them are loose. Spin your dial. Higher the number, the wider it is. Lower the number, the tighter it is. Next thing on the meter that a guy I really like to look at is this baffle arm. It's normally set on 2. This one feels pretty good. Grab yours. If it's pretty loose, if you're in a no-till condition, I've seen where a pigweed, a weed comes up and hits this, and when it does, it shoves it shut or partially shut. Now you got a row acting funny. Always think simple. Come back here, check that lever first, make sure it didn't get hit. If it did, put it back to 2. When you're doing your inspection, if it's really loose, you can kind of tweak it and get it back to where it has some detent to it. Seed brushes, look at them. If they're wore really bad, replace them. A lot of times you can take a blowgun and blow them out and clean them up and straighten them up. This one you can pull out and flip around if you want, but if they're wore, I'd just replace them. After that, the thing is with this, guys, we got a lot of guys that maybe don't want to trade planters, but they're getting wore. Your air clutches are slipping. You got some motors leaking oil out the front of them. You look at your seed disc, can't hardly see the line no more. We can retrofit your planter to precision meters like the 2100 series have. If you have questions on that, talk to our precision guys. They can get you an estimate of what it would take to update your planter to that style. Okay, one more thing I want to talk about is storage of these. I would not store these just leaving them in the planters. You know, when you get done planting beans, milo, whatever you are, park the planter in a shed, I'd take your seed disc out. I don't have one right here in front of me, but what I do or tell guys is if you take a piece of dowel rod or electric conduit, whatever fits the center hole right here, and I'd put a hose clamp on it or a board on it and just slide them all on that deal. And when you get all of them on there, put another board here and keep them stuck together and keep them out of the sunlight, because I've seen where they've been in the sunlight just laying in a box and they'll get warped. So take them out, put them on a dowel rod, put them in a closet somewhere out of the sunlight, where rodents are, because if you leave them in the meter, I've seen where mice will crawl up in here, and on the back side, which is where all the stuff takes place, it's not this side. This side here, they'll just chew on this, put a bunch of grooves in it, and that ain't no good, and these are like 50 bucks a piece, so it'll just cost you in the long run. So take a little time and do it the way you need to do it here. So you got a lot of options what you can do. You know, use your own judgment on what makes most sense to you, but there's a lot of options here. And just remember, on the planter that has this meter, we need to use graphite. So, okay, I just want to talk about the downforce pneumatic valve on these planters. This one's black, so that is a new updated valve. If you've planted and had trouble with it coming up saying downforce out of range, target not expected, go back and look, and if your valve is blue, I would just update to this black valve. The blue valves, they worked okay, but over time they'd get all gummed up. It's not worth trying to take them apart, fix them. Just take it off, put the update on, the black valve, and you will not have any more trouble with your pneumatic downforce. Okay, one more thing, guys. We've all had the solenoid valves up on the gold valve up there leak oil. So what I would recommend, if you've had this trouble, if you want us to come out and do it, or you can do it, is unfold your planter, set it down on the ground, and I start at the back and I just work my way forward. Buy this kit. It will have the big O-ring. That's for the solenoid stem. That's the one that always blows out. Don't match this up out of your O-ring kit. I have never found one that fits just right. If you use this one, it'll fit the way it's supposed to fit. What I do if you've had trouble with these is I've set the planter down on the ground, unfold it. That way you don't get no surprises when you take that out. Nobody's going to get hurt. Or we can do it. But I'll take them out one at a time. And then I'll blow it all out, spray some carb cleaner in there, put the new O-ring on it, and use blue medium strength Loctite and just put a drop on the threads. Thread it in, torque it, put it back together. Move forward, get them all done. If you do them all, you won't have no trouble. If it happens during planting season, you're gonna do the one, move on. What I recommend though, when you put the one on there, have one of these on hand. When you put it on, put it together, take a paint marker and just mark that one. Because what'll happen is the one next to it will blow 2 days later. And you'll think, well, it's the same one. And you'll just keep chasing your tail thinking you're having a repeated deal, but it's moving around on you. But if you mark it, you'll know it's not the same one, it's this one, or it is the same one, maybe you did something not right. This concludes our first ever virtual planter clinic. I hope this information was helpful and useful, and thank you for watching.